the station at Miss V's office here this afternoon. Welcome, everyone. I am so excited. As I said, we're going to be talking about supporting parents with tips on careers guidance. One of the most important components of this work that we do is not just what happens in the classroom. More importantly, it must happen at home as well. And we know that one of the greatest challenges parents have, as a parent myself, I get it. I know that we have people here on the panel, also parents, and understanding that our children don't always listen to us. So tonight isn't about getting you to go home and be a career practitioner with your children. It's really just to help you understand some of their concerns, and we're going to be offering you some incredible tips. Joining me this evening, I have three incredible guests. We're going to start with no particular order. Cleona McManaman. She is currently a level 7 qualified careers practitioner with a Bachelor of Arts degree from the University College Dublin. She has a master's degree in education from Edge Hill University and a postgrad diploma in career guidance and development from the University of West Scotland. She holds the CDI's qualification in career development and upholds the CDI Code of Ethics as a registered career development practitioner. Having previously worked in both mathematics and pastoral leadership roles in schools in the UK, she now works at Dubai College as a mathematics teacher and has extensive experience of working with young people within the secondary and further education. Cleona is also the careers practitioner at Dubai College, and being approachable, friendly, supportive, and with a positive can-do mindset, she is enabled to build a positive working relationship with her clients. She believes that there is no limit to potential, only barriers that can be removed, and enjoys working closely with students to develop their self-awareness and explore their career ideas and aspirations. That was a mouthful. Welcome, Cleona. It's so great to have you with me here today.
Thank you.
And then we have Daniel Adkins, who has worked for 20 years in the IT industry, performing work for companies including IBM, Dell, Clorox, Philips, Visa, Hershey's, and Coca-Cola. As a process improvement expert and a project manager, Dan implemented a number of the major process and system upgrades and served as a CIO and CEO. After retiring from the IT industry, Dan joined the Academy and has taught at both the undergraduate and postgraduate level in business and IT. In his 13 years in education, Dan has served for 6 years as academic director of an international branch campus of a top 400 Australian university, and is currently the group CEO of Transnational Academic Group, which operates international branch campuses of the top 200 universities in the Middle East and Africa. Another mouthful. Welcome, Dan. It's so great to have you with us this evening.
Thank you, Maria. Glad to be here.
And then we welcome Alessandra Layton, who is an MBA qualified and has diverse cultural and international professional experience. She continually challenges herself and has fantastic and diverse experience academically, practically, and culturally. Alexandra's strengths are her determination and commitment to making a difference. She is an extremely hard worker and has excellent communication skills. Alessandra prides herself on her ability to deal with pressure and multitask in a positive and friendly and flexible attitude. Welcome, Alessandra. It's so great to have you with me here today as well.
Thank you, Maria. Hi, everyone.
And then, of course, you have me. I am Miss V, otherwise known as Maria V. Taratos. I am a careers practitioner. I have worked in institutions and as a consultant. My vision is really to empower the quality of careers guidance across the United Arab Emirates and across the Middle East, and then, of course, collaborating with practitioners across the globe. My number one priority is to ensure that the conversations of careers don't just happen at the institution, and really to prepare our students for career readiness wherever they choose to live around the world. And I see that one of the challenges that we're facing right now is a disconnection between what happens at school, what happens at home, and how we're all supposed to be preparing them, but somehow we are disconnected, which brings us to this conversation. So I promise to speak at a more normal rate right now as we get into this conversation. I'm going to start by going around the table and starting with Cleona. I'm going to ask you about the challenges or some of the challenges that you see parents experiencing when they're trying to help their children with careers guidance. And the reason I'm starting with you, Cleona, is because I think parents will best relate with what's happening in a school environment. And then, of course, we're going to go around the table. So what would you say are some of the challenges that you are noticing with parents?
I think some of the main challenges that I've noticed are that some of the parents aren't sure about the new careers and new jobs that are out there at the moment. Careers are moving very fast. There's a lot of jobs out there that weren't there even 10 years ago, never mind 12, 15, 20 years ago. So they feel a little bit overwhelmed if their children express interest in careers that they know nothing about. Really just that fast changing job market, really, they want to know what's out there, what's available for their students, or for their children, and what they should be looking at. How can they prepare them for those jobs of the future?
It is quite a challenge. And I know that Dan speaks often about careers for the future, but do you think, Cleona, that that's something that we need to be focusing on? Do you think that parents should have that focus on worrying about the jobs that don't exist yet? Or do you think, from your experience, that there's a better approach to be taking that can help them feel more relaxed in their role as parents?
A lot of the time when I'm dealing with students, when I'm speaking to the parents, I'm letting them know that it's not necessarily preparing them for those jobs of the future. It's learning the skills that they will be able to apply in any job that they can go into. So it's those interpersonal skills, the communication, problem solving, being able to work as part of a team. So those are the skills that will help them no matter what type of career they go into. So it's those interpersonal skills that are more important than anything, really.
And definitely skills we see in the classroom, but I think this smoothly takes us to Dan. Dan, what would you say, or what do you consider to be some of the much needed skills from your experience for these future careers that brings a lot of anxiety to parents who aren't really ready to help their children at home?
Yeah, well, I think one of the most important things is something that Cleona referred to, and that's understanding what is actually out there. And as parents, understanding how to deal with the social pressure. I remember one speaker that I was listening to said in his culture, you were either a doctor, a lawyer, or a failure. And that's the way that their culture looked at it. The problem is parents tend to be pushing students to go to university. And I know this sounds strange from somebody who actually runs a university campus, but in reality, probably 20 or 25% of the world's population at maximum needs a university degree for the kind of jobs that they're going to do. Another 30 or 40% are going to need to go into the technical and vocational education. Another 30 or 40% on top of that will go into things like apprenticeships or directly into entrepreneurship for the work environment. So I think one of the first things that parents need is to understand that all work has dignity and that their children are successful if they get up every day and they are happy about going to work and not dreading it and spending 40 years of their life doing something they hate. Now, when we talk about the children's side of it and what the parents can do as far as skills, Cleona touched on the idea of teamwork, which is hugely important, being able to understand and interrelate to people, developing emotional intelligence, things in that area. Another thing that is hugely important, and we hear it talked about so much with the millennial generation, is older precious snowflakes, and they get participation trophies and no one ever does anything hard and they just want life handed to them on a platter. As a parent, we have a responsibility to both model for our children and to have them themselves do hard work to accomplish something and to get achievement. And we need to teach them that the rewards have to be intrinsic, not extrinsic. So bribing your children to do something teaches the wrong thing. It teaches them that the rewards come from outside. And psychology has shown us that even if you take a child's passion like drawing and you start giving them rewards based on it, they very quickly lose interest in it because the reward's no longer intrinsic. So I think those are some key areas that parents need to work on with their children.
Fantastic, fantastic advice. Dan, would you say that you see this when you're recruiting new members of the team and through your experiences of corporate, that there's a gap in that skill of resilience and kind of finding that intrinsic reward system?
Yes, absolutely. One of the biggest problems I've had in corporates is people who only will do what they're noticed for and what they're externally rewarded for. And unfortunately, that's not the kind of person you can really have working in an organization, because if you're not watching them, or if something comes up that's outside of the standard policy and procedure, they're not going to do it because they don't have that internal drive and they don't have that work ethic. When I'm hiring people and when other senior officers I know are hiring people, one of the things that we really look for is, does the person have internal drive and do they have the right work ethic? Would they keep doing their job no matter what happens? And today I was talking to a gentleman whose company is actually shutting down, but they still, to fulfill their obligations to their clients, have to continue working for 2 more months. And the majority of the team, even though they're still getting paid, are blowing the work off and are not giving their full effort. Where someone with the right attitude says, on the last day, I'm going to walk out of my office with my head held high, knowing that I did my absolute best till the last minute. That's the kind of people that corporations want. And if young people want to eventually get to the corner office, that's how they get there.
That's very, very interesting. We're going to tap back into some of the things you were talking about with Cleona and how that shows up in the classroom. Definitely, I can hear what you're saying, and I can almost hear the conversation at a parent-teacher information evening, and some parents being told similar things for their children. So it's interesting to see that we can transition that into work. Alessandra, I know that you've recently done work with Expo. You were there, you met people from all over the world coming and displaying things for their careers. What did you learn about the industries and the future careers that can help parents on this call right now to build skills for their children at home?
Yes, I've learned a lot. I had an amazing experience at Expo, and I think the first question everyone had before Expo started was, what is Expo about? And I thought about innovation, technology, but it was a lot more than that. It was about entertainment. It was about education. So I think about the industry in the key areas of Expo: mobility, sustainability, and opportunity, which I think, it's like you guys were saying, like, we want our children to be happy, but we want them also to do their research, to keep up with what is happening in the world, and to be worried about the global issues that the industries are changing, traditional industries are changing. So how can we prepare them for this, to develop these new skills, but also to, like, these green jobs that are starting now, the increased demand of social enterprises and all this. I think it's important as well.
That's really very, very interesting, Alessandra. So from your experience, what would you say were the top types of careers that you think, parents pay attention to this? So you mentioned those green careers. Maybe tell us a little more about what a social entrepreneur is, because I think that's something or social enterprise, to help parents understand what that means, because I think that's a really important one. And more we are starting to see social enterprises. And I think the UAE Careers Community is an example of a social project that is growing into a social enterprise. So maybe explain that, Alessandra, and then the types of careers that can come from it.
I think anything innovative that helps the environment, and it's in high demand. And also, if you've been in Expo, you remember the robots, you remember the solar panels, and everything about helping to protect the planet. It's in high demand. Also, the jobs still in healthcare. Since the pandemic, we have the increase in demand in healthcare specialists, and it's all about understanding how the industry is changing, and if they have drones, so who is going to help with the monitor the systems, who is going to help manage the system. So it's to focus on because they're going to replace the jobs, but what are the jobs that is going to be created?
Thank you so much, Alessandra. Cleon, I want to come right back to pick up on something that Dan was saying about those skills and finding that intrinsic reward. In the classroom, we are guilty of trying to reward students, to encourage them to do well. We're all guilty of that as educators. But how do you see that transitioning into what Dan is saying, where on the workforce front, one of the biggest challenges is having people working that are doing it for an intrinsic reward and not because of a motivation, either a monetary motivation or a beneficial motivation? What would you say as an educator can help parents to understand that what we're doing in the classroom is actually preparing them for that transition into the workplace?
Oh, well, the main thing I would say is, first of all, we need to realize that the children that we're teaching are going to be all-rounders. We don't need to focus just on the academics and pushing them forward that way. We need to find something that the students are passionate about, something that they are really interested in and something that they enjoy and really want to do. If we focus just on the academics, a lot of the time, the students are doing it because they'll get good grades, or they may get into a career that they think society wants them to be in, rather than something that they actually really want to be in themselves, which is the main thing. So many of our students have they have hobbies that could bring them into so many fantastic options of careers, and those are the things that we should be looking at, really building on what the students enjoy themselves.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate, Cleona, and this is open to anyone on the panel. I think it's important. What I'm hearing, there are several camps of careers, and what I'm finding in my journey through this profession is everyone's a careers practitioner. And everyone has an opinion of how a young person should be prepared. So playing devil's advocate, the idea of help them to do what they love to do and find their passion. Dan was saying from an interview that he was listening to, that they were describing success and failure. Alessandra is saying over at Expo that there are some key industries that really are going to be driving forward that we need to be paying more attention to. As educators, we're testing and we're pushing students to do these tests. They're still having to get minimum grades to get into university. There's still a push for these grades to get into high-ranking universities. But yet at the same time, as educators, we're telling parents, don't focus on the grades. How do we help? Because as a parent, that must be really confusing. So how do we help them to understand that school life is actually, in my eyes, the playground for what's coming in that work life that Dan was describing?
I think really it is to get the students involved. And as you said, okay, yes, they do need the academics, but they need to show, I suppose when they're applying to universities, they have to write personal statements, they have to write application essays. They need to show that they have built some of those interpersonal skills that we were talking about earlier, and how they found those either in their academics or in their hobbies, which is one way of doing it. And choosing, when they are choosing subjects, choose the subjects that they enjoy, rather than feeling, oh, it's, I know as a mathematics teacher, I have so many students are going, I'm going to do maths A level because it's a good A level to have. And I keep trying to explain, it's not a good A level to have if you could get a much better grade in music or drama but you're doing maths because you think people want you to have maths. If you don't enjoy it and you're not going to get your best grades in it, it's probably not the option for you. Those grades are good, and obviously, depending on what you want to do, there are certain subjects you should look at, but you don't have to focus on, you don't have to say, I want to do a science, I want to do maths, I want to do a language. Have a think about what you're good at, what you enjoy. A lot of university courses especially aren't, they don't specify which A levels or which IB subjects that you have to take when you're getting in there. Obviously the medicines and engineering, a few of those do, but so many of them don't, and your degree doesn't always lead you exactly into a career. A degree is showing that you have the ability, but your passion and your interest and showing that you can do this is what can push you on your degree. I have known many people that have done degrees in subjects completely unrelated to their current career. So many people are going to have 2, 3, 4 careers in their lifetime. They may have 10 jobs. So your career or your degree doesn't necessarily have to focus on that. So although we are saying academics are important, you can still bring those into that area that you want to focus on and bring it into your passions again.
Thank you, Cleona. So it's so confusing, I think, for parents knowing they want what's best for their children. But like Dan was saying, there's society, there's so many different messages coming through. Dan, as a CEO of an academic group, I know that you're in the field. You see fresh students coming through these universities. What are some of the challenges that parents need to be aware of to support their children at home, remembering that it's not about the degree, the goal is a thriving career that makes them feel like they're thriving?
That's a great question, Maria. I think there are a couple of factors that parents need to consider. One is children, unfortunately, due to societal pressure and just what has become the norm, end up narrowing too soon. And a lot of students get into university and one teaching period, maybe 2 in, realize this is not what I want to do. But now they've got the pressure of they've already used up a year and they've already used up that money that their parents have saved up, and they feel compelled to continue even though they know this is not the right thing for them. In David Epstein's book, Range, he actually talks about this problem of how students do narrow too early. And if you look, very much as Cleona said, a lot of people, and actually it's more than half of the population, does not end up working in the degree field that they studied. They end up doing work that is either completely unrelated or only tangentially related. And Cleona was right, it does demonstrate that you have the ability to learn and to persevere and get through what you have to accomplish a goal, which those are good things and those are good transferable skills. But I think there's a fundamental problem with the way careers are dealt with. Not only is it society sometimes saying you're a doctor, a lawyer, or a failure, but children and parents are not exposed to the number of careers that are out there. They don't even know. And I really feel like from the earliest days of primary school, from grade 1, just woven into the curriculum, every time you're talking about a subject, talk about the careers that that subject can lead to. Bring in people to have a little 15-minute age-appropriate talk about what it's like to be in that career, the day in the life, how did they get there? So that from the earliest age, children are growing up knowing that there is a multitude of opportunity and that there are many things they could go into. And the parents also need to be engaged with that. So reports could be going home saying, today, we talked about this kind of career, and giving the parents the information on it. Because understandably, parents want their children to be successful, and some even unabashedly want their children to be able to afford to take care of them in their old age. But if you look at the ROI, the return on investment on different educational pathways, in some research I was doing recently, the pathway that I found that had the highest return on investment did not involve going to university. It involved becoming a windmill technician, someone who goes and works on the giant windmills that we see all over the world now. It takes 1 year of vocational technical school that you can do for 10,000 US dollars or less. And the demand is so high right now that on the day you start the program, you have in hand an offer letter for a job for the day you graduate, paying in excess of $100,000 a year. So in a 1 year return, you've got 1,000% return on investment. Name a single college degree that gets anywhere close to that. It's just not.
Yeah, I know. Again, I'm going to take it back. It's careers from my experience. It's a cultural, it's socially constructed. We don't, and I think that we are still in a society that still believes the degree is the way to be directing. And then I wonder who's responsible for that. But that's a whole different topic. We definitely need to bring this topic, is whose agenda is on the table when we're pursuing degrees is really something that we need to be bringing. But bringing it back to parents, I do completely agree that parents will want to start helping their children at home, and teachers can do that as well by embedding these conversations, which brings us to Cleona and asking, Cleona, in your experience, when is the right time to start? Dan mentioned that we don't need to wait till they're older. We can start having these conversations when they're younger. But as a parent at home, many think that it's when they're hitting grade 11, year 12, year 13, grade 12. That's the time, because that's when traditionally older teenagers are preparing for their post-secondary pathway. But what do you think, in your experience, is the best time for a parent to begin?
Really, you should be having these conversations with your children from a very young age. There's research and evidence out there that suggests that children as young as 4 are starting to think about their future careers. I know I've got a 5-year-old son who tells me what he's going to be on a weekly basis, or if not daily. And they pick up on these things. Obviously, a lot of it is from TV, social media, and so on, or just from listening to their parents at home. How do you talk when you come in? Do you talk about your job in a positive way or a negative way? Do your children see you being tired or stressed about work? Or are you happy when you come in? Do you talk about it in an excited way? And all of this can be rubbing off from, as we said, as young as 4 or 5 years old. The other thing is, you can obviously have these little talks about careers without necessarily going into it. I know I often point out little things, if we're with my own children, when we're baking or we're doing something, we talk about, oh, you could be a baker, or maybe you could sell your cookies in a shop, and so on. So you're talking about all those different types of careers that are happening all the time. And just as you bring it on, as the children get older, you're talking about things like, possibly if you see construction work, you could talk about all the different jobs that are related to that. It's not necessarily just working on the construction sites. There are your architects, there are facilities managers. There are so many other things that you can look at there, and how these things are designed. So really, those conversations can be happening from any time, 3, 4, 5 years old, right upwards. And they can be brought in when you're on holidays, when you're watching TV. I know I had a conversation with my 5-year-old about being on TV, because he was trying to work out how you could be in the TV and the jobs that you could do, how he was reading the news. So there's lots and lots of different things that you can talk about there.
I think what I'm most appreciating in this conversation is, as we're talking about careers, we're all aligned. We're not talking about a degree. We're actually talking about those occupations. And I think for any parent listening to this right now, it's understanding the difference between the two. Alessandra, would you say that at your time, in your experience, either at Expo or in your other experiences, that parents should, or maybe in the experiences that you've had, that when we talk about careers, that the conversation goes one way rather than the way to occupations?
Yes, I think what parents need to think now is to really plan the time to talk with the children. It's two things for me. I think it's time and understanding, because once they come to you and say, "Oh, I want to be that crazy scientist," okay, I know nothing about it, but let's go and find out and let's research together. So, and another thing, like, we want the young to be adaptable to all these changes that is happening in the world. So regarding like to green jobs, how can we support them? It would be, the example would be, how can we raise them to care about the environment and so on.
Completely agree. We're going to go into the audience right now. We have a few questions coming through. Karen says that the figure of 20 to 25% of the population need a university degree to do their work is interesting. Yet there is such a push from schools for young people to aspire to go to uni. I know we tapped into that. Who on the panel wants to address that statement?
I'd love to.
Go for it.
So it is a conspiracy, and I'm not talking in terms of grand conspiracy theories, but universities put a lot of pressure on schools to have the students fill out applications and things like this, coming out, doing fairs and that kind of thing. And they do it also a bit more insidiously in terms of the entire education establishment, which includes people from universities, working on league tables and rankings. And schools understand, if they want to be able to charge the highest tuition fee that they can, they have to stand well in the league tables, which means that they've made sure that their students have gotten really high grades on whatever board exams they're sitting. And they need to be able to show parents a list of prestigious universities that their students have gotten into. And it creates a pressure at the school to drive children to get admission. Schools talk about, 90% of our students got admission to university. Imagine what would happen in the world if 90% of the population all got university degrees. Think of all of the jobs that during COVID-19 we admitted were the crucial jobs that would not get done. So it really is a conspiracy of the schools and the organizations that put out the league tables and the universities, all to drive this way, because it's in their financial interest, but it's not in the best interest of the children, and it's not in the best interest of their parents either.
I know. I want to add to that. Does anyone else on the panel want to add to Dan, or I'll jump in? No? Dan, I think, and Cleona and Alessandra and parents listening, I have to say that I completely agree with everything you're saying, Dan, and Karen, that is right. There is so much push. I'm going to play devil's advocate and say it's the job of a careers practitioner to advocate for this and really understand, as Dan was saying, is who's at stake here. It should be about the well-being of children. Now, I don't live in a fairy tale. I live in reality. I understand the politics of private education and even publicly funded education. But I think if anyone's going to advocate for preparing students for their future careers, it has got to be the careers practitioner. So I'm going to build on that and ask Cleona, Alessandra, feel free to jump in here, is how do we empower a careers practitioner to support the parents and really help parents have a voice and help their children have a voice? Because we're all about preparing for the future, but I think somewhere along the line, Dan's right, there is a push. There is something at stake to be made, money, profits, recognition, whatever it is, but how do we empower that careers practitioner?
Now you've got me. I think mainly it is there just that we're sitting at, I suppose the fact that the schools need to back up the careers practitioner in the fact that they are finding the best route for the child, and they're discussing this with the parents, with the children, making sure that that child is following what they actually want to do. There are lots of other options out there, and as long as we let them know all the options that are available to them, we're not pushing any one thing. We need to be impartial and let the student know what options are out there, and they can make their own decision. I know I have spoken to many students recently and spoken to them about they're still doing a degree apprenticeship rather than actually going to university to do their degree, which is another option. Obviously, there's lots of degree apprenticeships out there. There's lots of other apprenticeships out there. And there's so many options available to the students. They just need to know where to find them. And I think that was the main thing when parents spoke to me. They didn't know some of those other options were out there.
Fantastic. Okay, we're going to go back into our questions. Mo Al-Saleh asks, entrepreneurship diversifies the economy and builds leaders. Don't you think it's better to push for that rather to push for those corporate jobs? This is another big one. Who wants to take this one from the panel?
I'm happy to if nobody else does.
Go for it, Dan.
Okay.
Should we be pushing for these entrepreneurial careers or the corporate jobs?
Absolutely, entrepreneurial careers. That is the future. Now, I've started a couple of startup businesses. I currently work in a startup and have worked in several others. If you look at the data, 99.9% of all businesses in the world are small and medium enterprises. They employ just over 60% of all employed people in the world and sell just under 50% of all goods and services. So odds are you're going to work for an SME at some point in your career, and you're definitely doing business with SMEs all the time. Another thing that is very interesting to note about SMEs is when they talk to entrepreneurs and when they compare them to corporate employees, entrepreneurs are almost always happier and by a wide margin than people who are working in the corporates. If you want to do something that makes a difference in the world, you're going to almost always do it as an entrepreneur. If you want to build the future and you want to come up with the next Bitcoin or the next concept like NFTs, or you want to start a social entrepreneurial enterprise to do as Alexandra was saying and really do something maybe about the climate, you're going to do that as an entrepreneur. And it's really unfortunate that very few universities have a degree in entrepreneurship, and even worse, most schools don't even address it. Most entrepreneurs are going to go directly from secondary school into being an entrepreneur. They'll never darken the door of a university. So we need to be teaching that from very early on. I know I was privileged as a young person, early teens, to be part of what was called Junior Achievement, which was an entrepreneurial club run by an organization that was attached to the US Department of Labor. That gave me an opportunity that I then was able to use later. But if you look at the most expensive companies in the world, the highest capitalized companies in the history of the world, they're being run by people who never completed a university degree. You think Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, they never completed university. So we need to be teaching that entrepreneurship, because that truly is the future.
So following on that question, Moel Saleh says, if that's the case, why do we still push young people into corporates? Now, as a practitioner myself, I don't see it as pushing them to corporates. I think that as a practitioner, I'm trying to get them to understand the opportunities that exist. But unfortunately, the confusion comes in when we're trying to help them to learn it's these larger corporates. I think they're more readily available. Cleona, what are you seeing? Do you see that we're pushing young people into corporates and not into entrepreneurship?
No, I don't see that we're pushing them into it. I do see that especially a lot of the students that I teach at the moment, are very interested in going into that corporate world, but that is what they're seeing out there. That's what they're seeing lots and lots of. We do speak about entrepreneurship and things about that, but really there's more opportunities that are advertised to them for the corporate jobs. So it's like, come and work with us, come and try this out. Whereas if they're going into entrepreneurship, it really is something that they have to kind of come up with themselves. It's something that really a lot of our students, not necessarily just my students, but a lot of students that I've spoken to, sometimes feel that their idea may not be good enough, and maybe it is getting a mentor, getting someone that will talk to them and have a bit of confidence in themselves that they could try this out and try out a startup themselves. And getting maybe, I know I've advertised a few things recently where they could get an apprenticeship with a startup company and see where those things are and see what it's like. And there's a lot more of that coming out now than there has been in the past.
I think you're right. I think it does come down to access. Alessandra, you are an entrepreneur. Tell us what that's like. And now that you have your children, can you see yourself encouraging them to go down that entrepreneurship pathway? Or do you still feel like there's the push to send them off into the corporate, larger organizations?
I think we learn a lot from work experience in the corporate world, and add so much value to later on. But nowadays you can just start anything easily from with a podcast and social media, and so it's a lot easier now to start something that they could do it while they work as well. It's not just one or other. I think perhaps I would encourage that, like doing both. But yeah, I feel like when they're following their interests and and open something for themselves, a startup, or it means a lot. It means they're passionate about it. They believe in it. And once you believe in something, if you put the hard work in it, it's gonna be successful.
I completely agree. I think anything that we work hard at, that we enjoy naturally, is that, we want to do better and we want to do more of it. Karen is saying that, Cleona, you're absolutely spot on in terms of focusing on what children love and what they're good at. She says that her organization is a social enterprise. They provide life coaching for young people, and they feel that they're very much in demand. When you link academics to something young people love, she believes that that's where the magic happens. So we're coming back to this, find your passion and make sure that young people are enjoying what they're doing, which I do believe is an important component of careers guidance. However, we have to play devil's advocate. We have to look at some of these assumptions. So going right back to the beginning, when Dan was saying how, that there are people in the world that believe in success and failure, with Mo Saleh asking, why are we pushing young people into those corporate jobs if there is more of a drive towards entrepreneurship? As a parent who might not know what to be listening to, a parent will want what's best for their children, either because they want them thriving or also thinking about the future in terms of those return on investments for their children. I think that it comes down to the fear of not being financially independent. And then there's I'm hearing, often I hear from students saying, I'm going to do this. And then when I make enough money, then I'll do what I love to do. Then I'll do what I really enjoy doing. So do you think that it has something to do with the financial stability, financial independence that's helping parents kind of push their children in one direction over another, maybe feeding into what institutions are saying? Go to university, get, and not just any university, go to that 1% of those universities. Do you think that this is the conversation that we're not having that's really dictating how to sway children into those careers? Anyone from the panel? It's a tricky one, isn't it? It's, what is the agenda? When we think about helping young people for those future careers, as a parent, we're just doing what schools are telling us to do, and we're trying to bring in our opinions of our own journeys. But how do we know we're getting it right? So do we drive them looking at financial independence? Do we drive them looking at the longevity of careers? Do we drive them to adapt to changes? Certainly the pandemic taught us many things about the world of work. Dan, you were right. There were jobs that were so needed and had no degrees attached to them. And yet we're still putting our noses up at some of those careers. So how do we help these parents in helping their children?
Yeah, I think part of it is the psychology of parents. As parents, we want to protect our children and we want to make sure that they have a good life. And unfortunately, in doing that, we can inadvertently end up bubble wrapping them and making their life not so good. If we have them go to university, get a degree, get into a corporate job in a well-respected field, we can feel like we've done our job. We have made sure that they're financially stable. They're in a job that when people at parties ask, so what do you do for a living? They can say, well, and everyone will go, oh yes, that's very good. So, we're helping them avoid social stigma. We're helping them avoid financial difficulties. So we feel like as parents, we're doing the right thing. But every time I think about that, I also remember the great book, The Death of Ivan Illich. He lived that life. He went to school, he got good grades. He went to university, he got good grades. He got a job in a big corporation as an accountant, and he worked his whole career there. Good job. And then as he's laying on his deathbed, he suddenly asked himself, what if I did it all wrong? And I don't ever want my child to be in that situation, asking that question. So what I've shared with my own child is, I don't care what you do for a career, because there's dignity in every kind of work. I want you to be happy, to enjoy your life. And whether you make a lot of money or a little money, whether you work in one career your whole life or you have 5, that's fine. I'm here to help and to support, and you find a way that works for you. And I think as parents, it's hard to do that because we know that that does create risk. And maybe there will be times when there will be financial problems, and maybe some people will, as you well put it, turn their nose up at the job that our children are doing or laugh at the job they're doing. But at the end of the day, if they're happy doing it, then we've done the right thing as parents.
It's a tough one, isn't it? I think you're right. I think in the story that you've retold, it comes down to when we're looking back at our life is what did we want to achieve? And I think sometimes we get lost in what society thinks we should do. As you were saying, Dan, that's very, very insightful. We're just coming right to the end. I've got two more comments here from the audience. Shahira says that universities have started incubators. There are majors in entrepreneurship and innovation. Countries are realizing the importance of SMEs and encouraging them. However, before pushing students directly into the market, parents should find gaining experience and understanding of the corporate world through the corporate job as a prerequisite before jumping into the uncertainty of initiating a startup. I love this comment. I'm going to play devil's advocate and say that it sounds right, but it also feels safe. It's like, let's get them going down that safe way. I know we don't have time to jump into it. I think we're going to use this in our next conversation. Let's pick up this conversation from to corporate job or to jump straight into SMEs. I know that I've interviewed professionals that did both on both sides of the fence. There's pros and cons to both. We have another comment from Mo Saleh saying he thinks that it's about seeding cognitive and critical thinking at a young age, problem solving and figuring out what people need and want. And this is how we have disruptive innovational companies like Uber, for example. That's so true. And I know, Cleona, you were talking about that. I think, Dan, you mentioned that as well. And also, Alessandra, what you saw at Expo was definitely aligned with what Mo Saleh is saying. And then we have Shahira, who says, additionally, many universities provide internship opportunities during the program so that they get to better understand and get a real sense of what they would like to do, at least which business that they're in. So much to say on this conversation. It has been a great pleasure having all of you here with me on the panel. We had a live audience on LinkedIn and we had a live audience here in the Zoom room. I don't know how you are all feeling, but the conversation of careers education will not stop at this one conversation. I believe that it's something that we need to be having more of. And I know that I'm committing the UAE Careers Community, which is where we're all here together. We're all committed to empowering the students of the UAE and also empowering our parents and our community. Dan, Cleona, Alessandra, do you have one top tip for a parent coming from your lens as a professional or an educator? Let's start with Dan. What's your one tip to a parent?
One tip to a parent: buy the book Range by David Epstein and read it before you have a careers conversation with your child. It will completely change your perspective and in a very positive way.
Thank you so much. Cleona, one last tip for parents.
Just use any situation can lead to a mutually beneficial conversation about careers. You can lead this into careers at any point and start those conversations early.
Fantastic. Alessandra, one last tip for parents.
I believe there is no right or wrong sometimes, and I believe as long as we provide them with a growth mindset and know they can learn from the mistakes, and everyone makes mistakes, sometimes they don't know what to study or what career they should choose, but as long as we learn in the process and we grow, it's the most important to me.
Fantastic. And I'm going to end it saying, as parents, we need to unlearn what we believe and we need to learn where the future is taking us. And there's only one way to do that. It's to adapt to the changes that we see coming. Stay connected. Join the UAE Careers Community next month when we bring a conversation that helps parents find experiences for their children through the summer that will be gaining experiences of work, and they're not where you think they're from. So this is it from me. Welcome to the UAE Careers Community. If it's the first time you've joined, it's been such a pleasure hosting this conversation. I hope to see you all next month when we bring our next conversation. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And that is officially a wrap.